So proud of myself that I remembered to record. I have a new light for the computer, but I haven't figured out the exact best way to put it. So if something is bothering people, let me know. Okay. All right. So if you remember, the subject of this class is the Haftarah of the week. Learning about it, preparing, and also looking for clues that tell us why our sages picked this particular portion. So interestingly, for this parasha, there's a different minhag, a different custom for Sfardim and Ashkenazim. And it's, I told you I sit with 5 different books. So some of them discussed it, some of them did not discuss it. As far as I know, we read the Ashkenazi one, but we're going to touch a little bit also on the Sephardic as well, because it's just very interesting. What's most interesting is if you think of it of pieces of A, B, C, I believe the Sephardic is A, B, and then the Ashkenazic that we read is B, C. But I haven't checked with Hillel Jaffe, our Uber Gabbai, to make sure that that's the one we read. So we will learn what we will learn. But the first thing we need to do is to talk about the parasha, because only when we know what's in the parasha can we figure out what the connection might be. So let's talk about the parasha. The parasha is Vayetzei. Remember, this is the beginning of the Vayetzei, Vayishlach, Vayeshev, Vayigash. I think those are the 4 Vaz, I think. And Mikate, so that's getting us further on in Bereshit. Vayetzei begins. What does that mean, Vayetzei, the word Vayetzei? Come on, you can do it, guys.
He went out.
Thank you. And he left, or he went out, like Yetziat Mitzrayim. Same thing. Yetziat Mitzrayim. So Vayetzei, and he went out. Who went out? Yaakov, Jacob. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Moshe. I'm just checking with the people who came on a little later. Is it better to start at 11:30? Is that better for people, or it doesn't matter? Okay. Some of us, we're just late no matter when it is. That's just who we are. And I get that. Exactly. So really, I have to call for 11:15 and schmooze for 8 minutes. Yes, Moshe, tell me.
There was a problem. I got into the other class, even though I clicked on yours. I only started getting into your class by using my phone rather than my iPad.
It is so weird when those things happen. What's the other class?
I don't know. It's a lady, Hebrew.
Oh, not, who is it? Who teaches it?
It's in the email. I don't pay attention.
Got it. Okay, no issue. Okay, so that's weird. So is it possible that the link in the email was wrong? I don't know. I don't follow the email link. So, but as long as other people didn't have trouble, maybe it was a glitch, Moshe. All right.
Isaac also was in that.
So Isaac, how did you click? Let's just hear to make sure we don't.
I didn't see a link for yours. I mean, there was one link, and that was I think her name Livni. The one who teaches.
From Israel.
Yes.
Got it. So don't click on that link because she's not in the bites. That's the wrong link. So you need to. I guess we don't put links in all the time. I don't know. I haven't followed that. But it's the same link. What? That's true, Stephen. There aren't links all the time. But there is a page.
The link was there for you. You just have to, the writing is small. You just have to make sure you go all the way to the end. It was there.
It was there. Okay. So, you got to go to the end of that line and not the previous line. I could see that would be confusing. Okay. So that's probably what Isaac and Moshe did.
Recording in progress.
You went to the previous line instead of the end of that line. So you want to do that. And it's called the Bites Daily Classes. That is its official name when you look at the Zoom. Moshe, you're on 2. I'm muting you because we're getting feedback. So you want to get off of one of them. Okay, awesome. Okay, good. I'm glad we resolved that. Okay, back to the parasha. The parasha is Vayetzei, and he went out. So this is, I'll go over it. People are welcome to unmute and jump in if you'd like. A quick summary of our parasha. Yaakov it's so interesting. I read something really beautiful by Dora Steinmetz, Rabbi Silber's wife, who's an amazing scholar in her own right, about how Yaakov left as his mother on his, as I guess a mama's child or on his mother's bidding, even though she also asked her husband Yitzchak to tell Yaakov to leave. but he left on his mother's terms, but he came back. I know what it said. He left as his mother's son, but he returned as his father's son. Is that a beautiful line? I thought that was just so brilliant. He left as his mother's son, and he came back as his father's son. So that's something to contemplate, and just a little gift I'm giving you that I read in a book when I was reading about the parasha, and I thought it was just a beautiful, beautiful line. Okay.
How did he come back as his father's son?
Well, the idea being that he came back as a forefather and continuing the lineage of his father and not being only under the bidding of his mother. So you're right. I mean, obviously he's both of their sons, but is he following the path of what Rivka said or the path of Yitzchak, which is continuing Abraham? I thought that was, to me, that's what it sounded like. I'm sure there was more to it in her chapter, and this is not about that. But I think it's a really nice soundbite to take with us and to think about what that could mean. And I think it's true. When I heard it, it just sounded right. Okay. Yeah, Felice. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. You're still muted. You can see by the red on the microphone that you're still muted. Either you have to press on the microphone or *6 or star something. I'm sorry that I don't know what. So when you're unmuted, we'll listen to you. Figure it out, and then we'll hear what you want to say. Okay, the summary of the parasha. He leaves, and then it's the famous dream, the dream with the angels going up and down. And then he wakes up in the morning and he has a discussion with God. And then he continues on his way outside of Israel, going to Haran, and he meets by the well. And this is what Robert Alter calls the, I don't know how to pronounce it. Archtypical. Is that the archetype?
Archetype.
Archetype, you say?
I think.
No, I don't think that's how you pronounce it. Archetype?
Archetype.
Archetype. Yeah. Thank you. Archetype. I know it's written CH, so you don't pronounce H. Oh, Felice is unmuted. What did you want to say, Felice?
I just want to say that he came back as a married man and family. So to continue on in the path of yes, just
Nice.
be the forefather.
Beautiful, beautiful. Even though I just want to say, Rivka is the one who said to Yitzchak, I will be very upset if Yaakov marries somebody from here. So we've
Right. So we gave him an idea. And he was certainly old enough to be married.
No, I get that. I just don't know if the marriage is what signifies it. I think that's something for all of us to take home and contemplate because we don't have time to talk about it. But I just wanted to give you that beautiful soundbite and think about it. Just think about it. I mean, we don't need to answer that here. I just think it's a beautiful idea. And if you want, you can read Dvara Steinmetz's book. I'm sure she explains it in more detail there. But moving on with the summary of the parasha, so Robert Alter speaks of type scenes. I don't know, there's a word that he uses. Scene. Anyway, there were certain scenes that type scenes, yeah. So there's certain type scenes that repeat. One of them is the well, meeting the wife at the well. So Eliezer, the servant meets Rivka at the well, Yaakov meets Rachel at the well, Moshe meets Tzipporah at the well. These are scenes that repeat themselves, not talking about it here, just throwing that out. Meets it, he loves her, whether it's her outside, her inside, or both. And then he falls in love with her, goes back to her home, is accepted by the family, says, I love this girl and I will work 7 years for her, or that's the deal he strikes. Lavan, his father-in-law, tricks him and brings Leah, which he only discovers the next morning. It was very dark in the tent. There are a lot of midrashim about that. We're not going to go into that right now. And then Lavan says, oh, did I forget to mention? We don't let the younger one get married for the older one. How could it just slipped my mind to mention it? So we put Leah in there instead. And he said, well, I still want to marry Rachel. By the way, I just want to ask this group, not something that I was so aware of. I always thought that he worked another 7 years and then married Rachel. That is not what happened. Thank you. So yeah. So he actually, as soon as the Sheva Brachot was over, he married Rachel and then worked another 7 years. For a long time, I thought it was the opposite. Worked for 7 years, Leah, 7 years, Rachel. So basically, Leah and Rachel, the sisters, by the way, anybody can stop me if I'm saying something you're not familiar with, or if I say a word or name that you don't know. Leah and Rachel were married basically at the same time to Yaakov, which makes sense because they were in they were trying to have children at the same time. Okay. And then some of the children are born, the tribes. We have, let's see, we have Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Rachel asks Yaakov for more children because to give her children. We know that Yaakov can have children because he has children with Leah. And Yaakov, even though his own father prayed for his mother and that's how he was born, he got angry with her, said, am I in God's place? And so Rachel, this was something that was done at the time, that same way Sarah at one point thought that she could be built through Hagar. That didn't happen, but that was something that they did then. So she gave Yaakov, she asked him to sleep with her maidservant Bilhah, and they had two children together, Naphtali and Dan and Naphtali. And Leah saw she only had 4. She did the same thing. She gave her maid Zilpah, who had Gad and Asher. And then Leah had a 5th son, Yisachar, which actually came from the story with the Dudaim. Remember the flowers? Reuven brings flowers to his mother. Rachel is, anyway, so Rachel asks for the flowers, and Leah says in exchange, I will sleep with Yaakov. The whole situation sounds horrible, but that's the way it was. And then Sachar, there's the word Sachar, like a reward. And she said, it's as if I got a reward for this. Then she has a 6th son, Zvulun. And only then, when all 10 boys have been born, all the other 10, only then Rachel, by the way, not all of this is necessarily in the Haftarah, but I just want to give a background. And then she had Yosef. And that's when Yaakov says, it's time to go home. I want to go home. Go on, Stephen.
It then says after that, if I'm not mistaken, that when she became pregnant again, after Yosef, that when she became pregnant again, God made it become Dinah, because otherwise Rachel would have only had one son. Like she would have had way more than.
Right. There's a beautiful medrash. I love it. It's a beautiful medrash that Leah was pregnant with somebody when Rachel was pregnant, and the midrash, and it's based on a textual deviance. Midrash always is hooked on that. It's one of my favorite midrashim, where Leah says to God, where Leah knew somehow that she had a boy and that Rachel was carrying a girl, and they knew through prophecy, whatever that means, that there would be 12 sons. And she said, how could it be if I would have 7 boys, then Rachel would only have 1 boy, and she would have less than the maidservants, because each of the maidservants had 2. So she prayed, and the womb and the babies in the womb were switched, according to this medrash, and that's why Dinah was born to Leah, and Yosef was born to Rachel. Now, I once taught this to a group of women in Houston, and immediately the whole room erupted in, what are you talking about? So babies don't switch, but they jumped out. The souls are like, what are you talking about? You can't just switch. And I said, okay, let's assume that that can't happen. Then what is the Midrash trying to tell us? Okay, I will leave that question hanging there. I have an answer, but I'd be glad to hear if other people say something. Isaac.
No, I didn't hear the question.
The question is, how can it be that the babies got switched? What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. Or it doesn't seem possible. It's too magical. It's too voodoo. It's too. So I just want to suggest this because Stephen brought it up. To me, the Midrash is saying, in spite of everything that happened with Rachel and Leah, in spite of their envy of each other, in spite of the fact that they're fighting for Yaakov's love, they still care about each other. And Leah cared enough, according to this Midrash, to pray that Rachel wouldn't be embarrassed by having only 1 boy, whereas the maid servants each had 2. That is what I take away from this Midrash. Okay, moving on. Stephen, just gonna put you on mute because it's a little noisy. All right, continuing on. Yeah, Felice.
I just wanted to say quickly that Leah and they thought of the time when Lavan wanted to switch her instead of Rachel, and Rachel didn't want her to be embarrassed, so she gave her the simanim,
Exactly.
and then
Another
she was able to
midrash.
marry Yaakov.
So right, so those midrashim play into this idea of them really having this tremendous love for each other, which
Yeah.
somehow came through in spite of everything they went through. And that's for another class that I want to do once, maybe about relationships in the Torah and the Tanakh. Yes, Isaac.
It's, just occurred to me, it's interesting that in the text itself, one doesn't get a sense of that love. One gets a sense of, the envy and the.
So sometimes you have to
discomfort.
tease it out and get it from the Midrashim.
Mhm.
And that's something to discuss. That's why I really would love to do relationships. Maybe that'll be another year, because through the text, we could talk about the relationships. Okay, continuing on, there's the idols, Rachel takes them, and then Lavan, and there's a whole thing with the striped and spotted sheep, which I didn't even mention, where they become fertile, and then Yaakov becomes wealthy, Lavan tries to take the money. And so a lot happens in this parsha. I don't think we need to go into more detail, because I don't think, although anybody's welcome to find a connection. And I got 3 books in front of me and 2 on the side that I've used to prepare for this class. And I still think we'll come up with other ones. What I want to do now is give you a background of the Haftarah. So that's the Parsha. The Haftarah is from Hosea. It's from Hosea. Hosea is the first of what we call the minor prophets. Doesn't mean that they were less important. It means that we have much fewer chapters on them. And therefore they were lumped together in something called Trei Asar, which means 12 in Aramaic. I want to give you a background. This is a really, really interesting book written by a woman. I heard a class by her in the summer, and because we were doing the class on Haftarah, I ordered this book. It's called Haftarah Unrolled, Weekly Insights from the Prophets. She didn't find what she was looking for in the Haftarah books, so she wrote a book, which is really cool. And I was very impressed with her. The only thing I can't figure out is she lives in Israel and she still writes with things like Beis Yaakov instead of Beit Yaakov. That's like my only pushback to her. What happened to your Israeli accent? How did that not get translated? But other than that,
What's her name?
Kira Sirote. Kira, K-I-R-A, Kyra or Kira. Okay. After the death of Shlomo, okay, so remember the Trei Asar is 12. Trei switches with Shnei. Top switches with the Shin, the Reish with the Nun, between
Right.
Aramaic. Trei Asar.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay, who is Hosea? I want to give you a little bit of background. I think that's important to have some background. I mean, it helps me when I read it. Remember when they settle the land, so skipping over everything until David HaMelech, until their first king, and then did David HaMelech build the temple? Let's get a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Shlomo.
Correct. His son Shlomo built it. Thank you. It was gorgeous. I mean, I heard these like the descriptions that I used to read about David and about the legends of Shlomo and his throne, and it's amazing. Like he was like a Leonardo da Vinci. He was so brilliant. After the death of Shlomo HaMelech, always a problem because who's going to reign after him? The nation of Israel was split into 2 political entities. There was Mamlechet Yehuda, the kingdom of Judah, Mamlechet Israel, the kingdom of Israel, also known as Ephraim. You'll find out why in a minute. David HaMelech's dynasty remained in what's called the southern kingdom, which was referred to as Yehuda, and the northern kingdom was given to Yeroboam ben Nebat. Was not a good guy. He was not a good guy. Since he was from the tribe of Ephraim, and Ephraim, remember, is one of the sons of Yosef. Remember Ephraim and Menashe. The kingdom of Israel is referred to as Ephraim. You'll see in the Haftarah, it's going to be Ephraim. Let's just take just a few snippets from, really, she gave an amazing background here. This isn't even the Haftarah, this is just the background. So she says that Yeroboam ben Nebat was smart. He was politically very, very smart. And actually his kingdom flourished for a long time in spite of the fact that they went against the ways of God. Go figure that one out. He took several steps to establish the legitimacy of his monarchy. For his capital city, he chose Shechem, which is the very first place purchased by Yaakov Avinu. That's already a connection, right? We're getting like this, this is said at the same time. And David bought pieces in Yerushalayim, but Shechem was bought by Yaakov. And he moved his court to Penuel, where Yaakov had struggled with the angel. Remember, that's going to happen in next week's parasha, I think, where he goes to collect the few things that he left and he struggles with the angel. By associating himself with Yaakov, look how brilliant, Yeravam asserted that they were going back to their roots and that their kingdom, rather than Yehuda, was original and authentic. He also offered a religious alternative to the Beit HaMikdash, but he didn't have the Beit HaMikdash because Yerushalayim was in Mamlechet Yehuda. It was under it was in the other kingdom. So this is the whole thing about establishing two altars. This is a big, big deal that he established two mizbachot in two parts or two ends of his kingdom. One in the country in the north, one in Beit El, the location of Yaakov's dream with the ladder. Look how many connections we have to Yaakov, who is the main personality in this week's parasha. I just have to mute some people because I'm getting a lot of feedback. Just 1 second. Oops. Felice, I'm just muting you, and you can, of course, unmute when you want to speak. Just gets a lot of feedback, and Judy, okay? But please feel free to unmute if you want to say something. So what did he put in these places where he established the altars? Golden statues similar to the Kruvim. Remember, those were the angels that had the wings that were over the ark. But actually they were in the shape of Yosef. Did anybody know what Yosef's animal imagery was? Anybody know? Remember, each one had, like, Dan is a serpent and Naphtali is a deer. Anybody remember? And Yehuda is a lion. What was Yosef? Anybody know? He was a shur, a bull. So that's what, again, or a calf, actually, like the golden calf, which isn't awesome, is not awesome. I mean, I wouldn't have picked that because that doesn't have good memories. Yerovam made not one but two and told Yisrael, meaning told his kingdom, these are your gods who took you out of Egypt. Now, I want to say, I read all of this about alternative gods, and I find it so hard to understand because I don't know what it means to worship idols. There's just nothing in me that understands that or connects to it. Only the fact that it's brought up, and it was a very, very big problem. I once read a story that there are keys to three big Yetzer Haras in the world, evil inclination. One was to worshiping idols, one is to sexual, and the other is to, I can't remember. And somebody had a deal with God and said, please take away the Yetzer Hara for idol worship. And you know that story?
No, I know. So I don't quite remember it, but the Yetzer Hara for idols was taken away because we don't have
right. We don't have it, although we know that Buddhism and others do have. I mean, Hindu. There are certain religions that still bow down to idols. So I don't know if it was eradicated from the world, maybe just from the Jews. Is that possible?
Possible. I had a question about the Mishkan. Wasn't the Mishkan in Shechem previously?
The Mishkan, I think I don't know, the Mishkan or the Aron. You mean the Aron HaKodesh?
Well, before
Well,
Jews.
the Mishkan was in the desert.
No, where was the first?
Shiloh, no?
Oh, in Shiloh.
Yeah, Shiloh.
I thought it was Shechem for some reason.
You can look it up. I can't look it up while I'm doing this, but you can look it up and then let us know later in the class if you'd like to. Okay, because I don't get that always straight. I do know it was in Shiloh because Eli was there. Remember, Hannah went to daven in Shiloh, so I know it started there. But that was before the Beit HaMikdash was built. Okay, continuing. This is the thing. Even though they were enjoying economic prosperity and impressive military success, their arrogance and aggrandizement, okay, I read it better than I say it, is recorded in several stories in Tanakh that their society was infamous for injustice and deceit. The Haftarah, we're finally getting to the Haftarah, is taken from the middle of Hosea's rebuke of Israel for lying, cheating, and worshiping idols. Terrible. Israel, so what we're going to have to do when we look at the Haftarah is notice that it's going back and forth between the prophet yelling at them and Israel answering. They counter each criticism by claiming that they had learned deceit from none other than Yaakov. Yaakov practiced deceit. Now, there's many answers to whether it was deceit, if it was, it should be or shouldn't have been, but that's what this Haftarah is about. And the Haftarah begins at the same point as the parasha. Okay. Where Yaakov goes to Aram, leaves Israel and has to deal with the duplicitous. Learning a lot of words here. Lavan, by dealing with him on his own terms, Israel responds to the Navi by saying if it was moral for Yaakov to lie and cheat, it must be moral for them as well. And they say the golden calves are harmless. They're an intermediary to Hashem, just as prophets like Moshe were intermediaries. And the prophet Hosea responds in anger and tells them they're not fooling anyone with their hypocrisy. Okay, that is the background. Now I will open the Haftarah in Hosea. Just a moment. Okay. All right, so starting the Haftarah. Vayivrach Yaakov Sedei Aram. This is the word in the parasha is Vayetzei, but the word Vayivrach is in there as well. Remember, he's fleeing from his brother Esav. So you can understand, I think we can understand why the Ashkenazim picked this, although if we have time, we'll look at some of the psukim. Basically, the Sfaradim just start earlier. It's just so interesting. Like they start, I think Babeten Akavet Achiv, in the womb he tried to supplant his brother. Who was that? That was Yaakov, remember? I think that's where the Sfaradim start, but we'll see if we can get to that. In any case, we start from this pasuk. Jacob had to flee to the land of Aram. This is the punishment. Okay, we can't go into all of the explanations of the Sfaria is great that way. Vaya'avod Israel be'isha. Israel, who is Israel? Yaakov, it's another name for Yaakov, served for a wife. He actually worked, because we know he worked 7 years for his wife. It ended up being Leah. Uve'isha shamar. For a wife he had to guard, meaning the work that he did was he guarded sheep. Okay, we're getting that connection. So look at how quickly this pasuk just covers the whole first part of our parasha beautifully. Got that?
Question. How does it jump to Yisrael if we didn't get to the piece of the struggle with the angel, which is the next parsha, you said?
Well, at this point, Hosea is many, many, many years after.
Right, that's right.
Many years.
Okay, that's
years.
right.
So it's
Right.
okay for us to look back. And by the way, this is poetic. And sometimes, by the way, it's a great question, Judy. Sometimes Yaakov is used for times when it reflects his deceit, and Yisrael, which is like Yashar. Yashar
Right.
is straight. Yaakov has the word akev, which is heel.
Right.
So if you think of the foot, right, the ankle, so akev is heel, but the foot is bent. It's not straight, and Yashar, Yisrael, is straight. So sometimes we can tease apart the Yaakov and Yisrael by saying this is poetic. We use sometimes one, sometimes the other. And sometimes we could actually go back to the pasuk and we could see it in a moment, but Lance has a comment or question.
Yeah, I think the text is what we call ergodic, and that is that the text does not flow from a narrative plot, but rather it's in pieces. And it's ironically, or appropriately, it's like the shulam, the stairway. Sulam, right. The sulam, which is ladder, but it can also mean stairway. And so what you're getting here is,
Really? Is that true?
You're going from jumping.
You're just quoting that song, and she's climbing a stairway to heaven. I didn't know
Stairway to heaven, yeah, exactly.
To heaven, yeah.
Very good. Right.
I love that song.
In other words, but this requires a different method of reading.
Okay, what's the method? If you could just say it quickly.
Well, you have to connect the jots. In other words, you have to make your own connections with a narrative plot.
Oh, 100%. No, that's what we said, that in one pasuk, it kind of condensed the whole first part. Isn't that what I said? I think so.
Yes.
But you're saying it has a name to it.
Right, but it's also from one pasuk to the next.
Yes, and by the way, thank you for reminding me. I read something really awesome. I'm telling you, it is so much fun. It's just so much fun to prepare a class. I will forever thank Phyllis for thinking of this idea every time. I'll probably thank you every single class because every time I'm excited about it. So I didn't get to read this whole, and it doesn't have page numbers, which is really annoying. But Rav Meidan, so interesting. He also writes about the Haftarah. He actually gives a class. I'm sure his class is excellent. This is one of the Rashi Yeshivot of Gushitz of Har Etzion. Obviously, he's an excellent teacher. But he wrote Hoshea, the son of Be'eri. He said like this. This is so fascinating to me. The language of the prophet Hoshea, both the words themselves and their combination into sentences, is exceedingly difficult. So this is normal. Hi, Robert. This is normal that we're finding it hard to figure it out, that we're finding it hard to connect them. So thank you, Lance. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but he's saying there's more to it. Listen to this. This may be related to the fact that according to Chazal, he came from the tribe of Reuven. So remember, Reuven, Gad, and half the tribe of Menashe were on the other side of the Jordan. Remember, they're on the west side of the Jordan, right? Am I right? And the east side, yeah, the Tzad HaMaravi. Do you remember that the 2.5 tribes? Give me some nods, people. I just want to know in case if you don't know, I'm happy to explain. They asked Moshe, okay, thank you. 2.5 tribes. Some people say that Moshe added half of Menashe for many reasons. Menashe was big, and also because he wanted, Moshe brilliantly thought you got to have one tribe who has relatives on the other side to get them to go back and forth. I spoke about that once. I thought that was brilliant. In any case, Reuven is living far away geographically from the rest of Israel. Got that? So this is what Rav Meidan says. He says that Be'eri, the father of Hoshea, the reason Rav Meidan's, the Chazal say that he came from the tribe of Reuven is because Be'era was the prince of the tribe of Reuven, and so he connects it that way. So what does he say? I will mention only that the tribe of Reuven, a tribe of shepherds, journeyed far to the east. Oh, maybe on the east side? I thought they were on the west. I don't know. In search of, would somebody help me out here? Which side were the 2.5 tribes? Because now I'm confused. Oh, they were on the east side.
They were on the other side of the Jordan.
What's the other side, east or west?
East.
Oh, so that was my mistake. That's why I got confused. Thank you very much. So they journeyed far to the east, according to this, in search of pastures for their flocks, and split into factions. Each lived in their own isolated place at a great distance from the rest of the people of Israel, a situation that led them to alienation. There is room to suggest that the members of the tribe spoke a slightly different language, whose syntax was different from the normal Hebrew syntax. And that is the reason for the difficulty in understanding the words of the prophet Hoshea. I thought that was so cool, that there's an actual reason. It's not just as he's trying to be so poetic, and so they just spoke differently. So they were used to speaking in riddles, or they were just used to speaking a little bit differently. I just wanted to share that. So thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Continuing back to, I know people have sent me chats. It's a little hard for me to read chats at the same time as I'm facilitating the class. So I don't always see it. So if you want to say something, that's also okay. Or sometimes I'll stop and read the chats. Going back to so all we've done is read the first pasuk. And by the way, I had a hard time understanding. I got the words, but what is this all about? Until I understood that this was about Israel and Hoshea having a back and forth. And imagine one. I don't know that Hoshea is standing there speaking to all of Israel, and they're saying it. Maybe he did it with a small group. Uvinavi, but when the Lord brought Israel up from Egypt, it was through a prophet. Through a prophet, they were guided. Remember, we're still doing poetry. Uvinavi hela Hashem et Yisrael miMitzrayim. Uvinavi nishmar. So it's interesting using the word shamar and nishmar. Maybe they were used to speaking poetically, or in that word that Lance told us. I don't know what that word is. I forgot it already. And
Chiasmus.
No, chiasms I get, but that's not what I was talking about. You said a different when it's.
Oh, you mean ergodic?
Yeah, ergodic. So
okay.
This feels like ergodic.
You just had a chiasmus in there through.
I know. No, you're right. There is a chiasm. Yeah, you're right. There is a chiasm. Chiastic is when it's like A, B, C, B, A, or A, B, B, A.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Right. Okay. But
it's
I know it's chiastic, but doesn't chiastic always have something in the middle that's not repeated? I thought so.
It has two terms that are the same, but
right. Yeah, 100%. And we often find it in the Tanakh, and it's beautiful, and it often sheds light. Aleph Beta, Rabbi David, whatever his last name is, he uses chiastic structures a lot.
Foreman, David
Yeah,
Foreman.
he's great. He's great. Okay.
Rabbanit,
Yeah.
what is the meaning of the Hebrew that I mispronounced? Shulam, what is it?
Sulam.
Sulam.
Shulam, right.
Sulam.
What is the meaning of
I
that?
don't know that it means steps. It means ladder.
No, but in modern, isn't there a difference in meaning in modern Hebrew?
It means ladder
You sure it doesn't mean musical scale?
also.
Okay, and see, musical scale, if you begin to put the two together, what you're looking at here is there's music. In other words, it's like it's heavenly in music, but also the Haftarah is chanted. In other words, the words in the page here are don't have trup, right?
Yeah, they do. Say this is trup right here.
Okay, so but the trup is musical. It's this musical scale,
Oh.
right?
Yeah, that's nice. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're
That's
welcome.
beautiful. Thanks for the connection. Judy is probably quelling over that. Judy loves
Yeah.
connection.
Where-
All right, let's move on. Thank you, Lance. That's a beautiful thought. Continuing, remember we gave the background. So the Navi is saying Yichis Ephraim. So remember they're calling the Mamlechet Yisrael, the kingdom of Israel, Ephraim, because Yerovam is the one he came from. He came from Ephraim, from the tribe of Ephraim. Tamurim. So you should know Tamur in modern day Hebrew actually means the stoplights, which is so weird. But it also comes from the word mar, which is bitter. So Ephraim gave bitter offense. His Lord cast his crimes upon him and requited him for his mockery. Remember, this is what we spoke about in the background. And when he spoke piety, he was exalted in Israel, meaning in Mamlechet Israel, in the kingdom of Israel. But actually, he incurred guilt through Baal. Baal is one of the idols. And now they go on sinning. They have made them molten images, idols. It's switching back and forth to second person, third person. Like in that sense, it's all over the place. But we're getting the idea from the background that we heard. Yet for these, they appoint men to sacrifice. So this is so weird, the kissing the calves. It is such a weird thing. So weird. There seems that there was some sort of a ritual that when they brought the calves out, they would kiss them. I don't know what that was for. And the Navi speaks about kissing calves. That you remember there was child sacrifice to the Baal. That's why the Baal is considered so abhorrent. So according to this, some of the Jews at least did worship Baal and a child sacrifice. Says, wait a minute, you kiss the calves of calf, you kiss the calves who are, the sacrifices, the animals, but you don't love your children and you give them up as sacrifice. So that
It was also the idols of in Egypt, so they sort of calves.
That's interesting. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Good one. Yeah, that's a good connection. Yep. Okay, continuing on here. Just 1 minute. Yeah. So here's something a little bit beautiful. 1 second. Okay. So this is a poetic way to say that you're not going to last. And remember, there was the 10 lost tribes, which maybe the Ethiopians, maybe not. I don't know. They shall be like morning clouds. What happens to morning clouds? They dissipate. Tal mashkim lech. So tal is dew, by the way, so relevant. That's this Shabbat we're reading it. What do we start saying Sunday night?
Marid Hatal. No,
We say the
bracha. Tain tal umachar livracha.
Now they've been saying it in Israel already. That's true, but we're going to start saying it Sunday night. I thought that was just very appropriate. That one should that's a switch of the nusach in the Amidah. V'chatal mashkim holech, like dew. Mashkim means gets up early. Remember Vayashkem Avraham b'boker, that Avraham got up early. It's early to disappear, right? Dew disappears very quickly. If you don't get up early, you're not going to see the dew or feel it. Kimotz yisoer migoren, like chaff whirled away from the threshing floor. Uche'ashan me'aruba. And like the smoke from an arubah is a chimney. I don't know, is that what a lattice is? Is a lattice a chimney? I don't know. But in any case, these are all things that are ephemeral and they dissipate quickly and you can't catch them. So I thought this was actually a beautiful poetic pasuk, but what it's saying is that the people in Mamlechet Yehuda will die. They will disappear. Ve'anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am the Lord your God, me Eretz Mitzrayim, from the time I took you out of Egypt. And you have never known a true God but me. You have never had a helper or a savior except for me. I looked after you in the desert, in a thirsty land. Remember, God provided a well with water. Sorry, I want to add something here. What she points out, this woman, Kyra, she says, remember, they said, oh, there was an intermediary like Moshe who was in the intermediate. Therefore, we can have idols because the idols are intermediary, just like Moshe. And he says, it was not an intermediary who took the Jews out of Egypt and took care of them in the desert, but Hashem, God's self. And if their success made them take Hashem for granted, then God will turn against them. And let's see how well you'll do on your own. When they were grazed, they were sated. When they were sated, they grew haughty. And so they forgot me. So I became, this is really hard. I became like a lion to them, like a leopard. I lurk along the way. I mean, it's very, very visual and poetic, just very harsh. Like a bear robbed of her young, I attack them and rip open the casing of their hearts. I will devour them there like a lion. The beasts of the field shall mangle them. Great. You are undone. You have nobody to turn to but me. And now where's your king? Yerovam, let him save you. Where are the chieftains? Where are they? And remember, there's a whole discussion that when it says in the Torah that you should appoint yourself a king, it's not clear you should or you can. The wording leaves it open to interpretation. If the Jews are asking for a king because that's what they see, one second, I just need my water. Just don't go away. My tea. Where was I? Oh, kings, right. So, thank you. Just went back to the text for a moment. So the question is God giving kings because God commanded? And here it seems like you asked for kings, I allowed it, and look what happened. So going back to that, I gave you kings in my ire and take them away in my wrath. Sarur abon Ephraim, Ephraim's guilt or chet, sin, is bound up. Sfuna, this is really fancy Hebrew. Safun, remember Safun from the Seder, from the Pesach?
Sure. The Afikomen.
It means, right, from the Afikomen. So it means it's hidden or covered. Remember, by the way, just tell you, Safon, same word, slightly different.
The north.
Why is it called the north? Because the sun is hidden from the north. Safun. In Hebrew, a lot of the words are connected. That was just a little parenthetical, has nothing to do with what I'm reading. And now, again, the prophet is telling the Jews what's going to happen. So this reminded me of that song that we sing on Tisha B'Av. Eli Tzion b'tzareha, kimo isha b'tzireha. So that's about Tzion crying out as if in the pangs of childbirth, as like somebody who's in the pangs of childbirth. Pangs of child, chevlei yoleda, although we use it for chevlei Mashiach, that it is the sparks of Mashiach coming, but here it's used in a negative way. Pangs of child. Any women who have felt the pangs of childbirth, I can attest to that. It really does hurt. Pangs of childbirth assail him. The babe is not wise. Who are you birthing? I guess Israel. This is no time to survive at the birth stool of babes. Let's see what Sfaria says about that. Anything interesting? Oh, nope, doesn't. From Sheol itself, I will save them, redeem them from very death. Where, O death, are your plagues, etc. Revenge shall be far from my thoughts. So the Navi is going back and forth from, you can still save yourselves, Jews. If you come back and believe in God. Let me just see where else. I mean, these are all, okay, it continues into the 14th parak. It's just so hard to read it. I'm sorry. It's just very, very, very difficult. I cannot read this pasuk. You can read it. But what is, now, does this look familiar? Anybody recognize this pasuk? I will give you a hint, 2 words, Shabbat Shuvah. We read this on Shabbat Shuvah, on the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Shabbat Shuvah, this is the Haftarah, or the beginning of the Haftarah. It might be a few different parts. So this is about returning. So that's kind of beautiful to me. It's ending on a note of hope. Our sages never wanted to end a Haftarah or anything, Haftarah, anything that we do on a note of the Jews are terrible, always tries to end on a note of hope. By the way, again, parenthetically, if you've ever been in shul where they have to add an aliyah because there's a simcha or somebody comes with the yard site. So we have a rule, I think, in HR that you can't add more than 1. That was also the rule in the shul that I was in Israel. Because when you add a lot, it's annoying, and it's called tircha de tzibura. It's a bother to the tzibur. But when you divide up the aliyot, there are rules. You can't just divide them randomly any way you want. One of those rules is you may not end on a negative note. You have to end, that's one of the rules. There are a few of them. You have to end on a positive note because it's really, really important for our sages. That's why if they're doing a haftarah that is a hard one, a harsh one, they may, if they can't find a positive one right near it, they might take a pasuk from another chapter or even another prophet just to end on a positive note, which I think, by the way, is a great lesson for all of us. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful lesson for all of us to say, modeling for us that we should always try to end on something positive. It's really hard when we stay with something negative. I just want to point out that this is very quiet today. Just listening. Yes, Lance. Lance. Unmute. 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 Unmute.
Isn't that Kohelet? The end of Kohelet, you have a positive,
Right.
right? And for me, at least, that was tacked on by someone else. In other words, that's not part of the original text, although the text itself may be.
Anisha Teket. I will be quiet about that. That's a whole different thing. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing because I don't know very much about it, but I don't remember, even though we did learn Kohelet together.
Also, there are repetitions at the end of Haftorahs, right? Exactly what you say.
Yes. Very nice. Yes. So that we will, even in Echa, even on Tisha B'Av, we try to end on something a little bit more positive. Yes.
Right.
So now the Navi, I still want to have a few minutes to go to the Haftarah that the Sfaradim read, or maybe we do. Again, I don't know because I'm going to check with Hillel 100%. Take words with you. Return to the Lord. Say to the Lord, forgive all guilt, accept what is good. Instead of bulls, we will pay the offering of our lips. So that's really important. That is a trope that's repeated. And that's what I think Yirmiyahu says, that your offerings are not worth anything to me. As a matter of fact, it was an awful story that I read when I was preparing this Haftarah. That the priests, so remember last week we learned about the fact that the priests were not doing a good job. I don't know if it was exactly this, I don't think it was the same time, because it's the first of the 12 prophets and he was the last of the 12 prophets from last week, Malachi, but that the priests were keeping the animals for themselves and that they starved the animals so they would be very thin. It's just awful stories. But God says, don't offer me your offerings if they're tainted. Offer me truth from your own lips.
Don't we say that for all fast days, the Haftarah for fast days is Yeshayahu, I think.
Oh, maybe it's Yeshayahu.
Yeah, well, I don't need what good are your offerings and
right. Yes, correct. Yes, very good. Excellent. Yeah, it is Yeshayahu, but it might be Yirmiyahu as well.
Another point here is in the Haftarah, we talked about the kissing of the bulls, but now we're using our lips to be Mahalel Hashem.
Nice, beautiful. I love that. That is really sharp. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. that's really beautiful to switch using the lips for something that is not meaningful or not positive. And by the way, it could mean kissing the calves of the korbanot, but maybe it meant kissing the calves of those two statues. It could have meant both of them. So that's where it would mean using it for something positive. That's really beautiful, because that whole kissing calves thing was so weird to me. And then God says, if you do that, I will heal their affliction. Generously will I take them back in love, for my anger has turned away from them. Look at how beautiful. I will be to Israel like dew. Remember, we just said dew can evaporate, but dew is also reviving and sweet, and it appears without asking for it. And then Israel will blossom like the lily, strike root like a Lebanon tree. Let's say something interesting. Oh, not interesting. His bough, that's how you pronounce it, right? Boughs shall spread out far. His beauty shall be like the olive tree, which are really, really beautiful. Fragrance like that of Lebanon, which is cedar, which is a beautiful smell. They who sit in God's shade shall be revived. Yashuvu yoshvei b'tzilo, yechayu dagan v'yifrachu kagafen. Bring to life new grain, blossom like the vine, zichro kiyen Lebanon, scent of like the scent of the wine of Lebanon. Wait, where does it end? Just a minute, I want to make sure I don't go over. Oh, 10. Nope, two more. Ephraim, remember it's the same, Mamlechet Yisrael. Then they'll say, this is a dream. What more shall I have to do with the idols? When I respond and look to God, I will be like, I don't know what that word is, but like a bird, a ra'anan is fresh or blossoming cypress. Your fruit is provided by me, by God. So it's going back and forth. Mi chacham v'yaven ela, who is wise, will consider and understand these words. Prudence will take note of them, for the paths of the Lord are smooth. So that goes back to straight like Israel, and the righteous shall walk on them while sinners stumble on them. Okay, so that is the Haftarah. Now, as you can see, even though there was a lot of stories in the Torah portion, I didn't see so many of them connecting. I mean, I don't know. I read 5 different commentaries, but mostly it seemed to connect to the beginning and to who Yaakov was and this idea of deceit. Yes, Robert.
Following up on what Judy said,
Yes.
in the Charit, right after Ana B'Koach, it says, let our lips compensate for the bulls. And there's some other words.
Wait, I'm taking out a Siddur. No. How did you find that, Robert? You remembered?
Because I really like saying it every morning.
Wait, you're saying Ana B'Koach before L'Chadodi? No.
Yeah, well, in the Shachari, daily prayers, it says, Master of the worlds, your command is to
Where
bring
are
the...
you? Where are you in the where are you?
Well, in the art scroll Siddur on page 41.
Oh, that doesn't help me. I don't have an art scroll. Where is it juxtaposed with?
Right after Ana B'Koach. Read it in English.
Oh, yeah. I see it here. Yep. Oh, are you talking about Master of the Universe? You commanded us to offer the daily sacrifice. That one?
Yep.
We will offer in place of the, yes. Oh, and it's Hosea. So this is it. It's from here. It's from this parak. It's this parak. Very nice. So now you know where it's from. Beautiful. So everybody can remember this Haftarah when you say it, if you say that portion. Beautiful. Thank you. That was amazing to see how beautiful psukim that are so important actually end up in our liturgy. That is fantastic. I want to add one more thing. Just one moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So just a minute. All right. So she brings an idea. She, meaning this woman, Kyra, she brings an idea that we speak about. We say that Yaakov is somebody we turn to, and that Yaakov is emet. That is the defining value or attribute of Yaakov is emet, truth, which seems a little counterintuitive considering this idea of deceit. So if Hashem's ways are straight, remember we said that at the end of the Haftarah, how were Yaakov's deceptions in line with God's ways? So just reading from her book, we learn from the prophet Micha, who was a contemporary of Hosea, that he is associated with truth. One second. The midrash, oh, so there's a midrash that explains it. The midrash that describes, it's a beautiful midrash where the angels say, God, how can you create the world? Humans can't live according to truth and justice and they just can't do it. So according to the midrash, which I'm not going to go into now, but mankind's existence is in conflict with truth. God's solution, what does God do? He just throws down truth and says, well, in that case, divine truth will stay in heaven, but there's a humankind truth. So God's solution, having created man despite the objections of the angels, is take truth from up in heavens. Sorry, opposite. I apologize. Let me explain it better. He takes it up, God takes the heavens, throws it down to earth. I just love this idea. In order for truth to come back to the heavens, it has to grow out of the earth. We can only handle an earthly truth, one is that is mixed up with dirt and mud of our material existence. This truth must be raised and nurtured like a plant in order to see the light of day. If truth is hidden and complicated, then what is clear and visible may very well be false. In that case, a person who says what he thinks and calls it like he sees it is not, it comes into contention with truth. So Yaakov, listen to this idea. He was a man of truth because he did not deal with the world with its complexity and its dirt and mud. He dealt with the world as it was meant to be. And the truth was that Esav was not suited to the service of God. The truth was Esav should not have received the blessing. The truth was that Lavan owed Yaakov his salary, and the truth was that Yaakov could no longer stay at Lavan's house and needed to go back to Eretz Yisrael. Yaakov saw that truth and acted upon it. So it's just an interesting idea that what seems like not truth to us, perhaps in the world of absolute truth, this was correct. It was correct for him to get the blessing. So I thought that was just an interesting idea to separate between a manly truth and a godly truth, and to think that maybe Yaakov was a godly truth. Yes, Ted.
I'm not objecting to that, but I don't even think you have to go that far. I think
Okay, go on.
a number of people have thrown around this idea of Jacob being a trickster and being deceptive. And I think we have to be very careful about that, because what we're doing is buying into a Christian reading of Jacob and therefore of Jews. Oh, look at who your ancestor was. Of course you're like that. But Jacob is not so deceptive. As she said, he doesn't cheat Lavan.
That's true. Lavan, he doesn't cheat. He just doesn't tell him straight out that he's leaving.
Last week I said he bought the birthright.
Right.
And perhaps from the similarity of Bechorah and Bracha, that those are related, that so that when he deceives Yitzchak, he's actually just getting what's coming to him.
Exactly. I mean, I love that read of it. I just love the way she brought it to true truth and earthly truth. I thought that was such a nice idea.
I just want to avoid talking about Jacob as being deceptive.
Yeah, I hear you.
That
Or it
works.
seems to be. Maybe it's perception, and that's a better way that people perceive. But I hear what you're saying, and you're more familiar with that world. So I'm not familiar with the Christian world, so I don't see it that way, but I appreciate that you're bringing it in. Lance, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, all I want to say is Jacob is not a trickster, his mother is.
I don't want to end on that note. So let's find something else. Let's find something more positive. I think Rivka was very smart, actually. That's my opinion. She was, I'm trying to think of the right word. You know, there's different kinds of smart also. And sometimes women, it's not right to stereotype, but it is possible.
Let me reframe what Lance said.
Thank you, Ted.
But I'm not disagreeing with Lance. I'm just saying in a more positive way.
I hear that. Yep.
That a motif that runs through Bereshit and through much of Tanakh is that the oldest is not necessarily the best. And I say that as an oldest son.
Right.
But the
you have younger brothers, Ted?
No, but I have sisters. But what Rivka recognizes is that Yaakov is the spiritual heir.
Right.
It's important for him to get it.
And that aligns with Yaakov seeing the truth as well, or he probably would not have gone along with his mother.
Right. And so, Rivka does advise him, but she's recognizing, and this goes along with what you said, perhaps a higher truth.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
the same is with Sarah, you know, she understood, you know, it was a woman's wisdom that the heir was going to be Yitzchak, and that's, I was going to say Shmuel, but I didn't mean Shmuel.
Yishmael.
Ishmael, right.
Yeah, no, that goes along nicely. Robert, you want to add? If it's positive, we can end on your note.
But the actual superiority of women's thinking.
Well, I
Women-
think we can end on that note.
Okay. Studies
Couldn't
have
agree with
shown
you more,
women-
Robert.
What?
All right, friends.
Couldn't
this
agree
is-
with you more, Robert.
So-
Women have twice as many cross neural connections. They use
Ooh,
both sides of the head when thinking.
I've read that.
And
yeah.
And women, when men are playing checkers, women are playing three-dimensional chess.
All right. Well, I won't say this is every woman and every man, but it's so hard. I mean, I'd love to say yes, but you know, I don't like the stereotype. I just want to add that the Sfaradim, I do want to share this just before we leave, that the Sfaradim begin, just a minute. Where do the Sfaradim begin? They begin, they begin in the previous, no,
Mhm.
that's Toledo, just, oh, here we go, Yud Aleph. So 11, 11:7. That's what it says, Yud Aleph, yep. 11:7, this is 12. So remember, we're going back to it's the same guy, the same
Yes.
Navi.
Limshuvati.
From here, Va'amit Luim Lim Shuvati, yeah. But I want, and here's, remember, it's talking about Ephraim. We're familiar with that already. But what I want to point out, where did I mark it? I definitely marked it somewhere. But what I wanted to point out, oh, Yud Aleph Hey. Oh, wait, that makes no sense. 11. No, I wrote it wrong. It must be Yud Bet. Just a minute. 4 and 5. Nope. Let's try 12. Ah, here it is. Babeten akav. I read that before. Akavet achiv. So la'akov means to delay, to hold back, but also means he grabbed the heel. Like there are two ways to understand it. Uve'ono sarat Elohim. So he strove with the divine being. Remember, this is talking about Yaakov. Vayasar el malach vayuchal. This is almost a direct quote from the Torah that he strove, meaning Yaakov, with an angel and prevailed, etc. Beit El. That's also something that's where we say that he had his dream. V'sham yidaber imanu. So you could see, I think, why, and there's some more positive psukim here. You could see why the Sfaradim would start there. Leave it on that. I want to thank everybody. This was awesome.
Wonderful.
Listening and participating. And we shall be back next week. That's the idea. On Hanukkah, I'm thinking we'll probably we'll do the Haftarah of Hanukkah, but I am marking which Haftarah, but I'll look and see which one, because you read a different Haftarah. And actually, is it Miketz or Vayigash? One of them, you almost never read it. So eventually at some point we should read that one, but let's see. We'll see when we're not quite there yet. Wishing everybody a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.